and starting now.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to what I think is an incredibly chilly day for everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. We'll start in a few minutes. So, look, if you're joining us, if you've been to any of our other webinars over the last couple of weeks and even before then, before Christmas, you'll know the normal procedure we go with. It'd be great to know who's joining us today. So if it's the first time you're joining us, like I said, or you're joining us in any other webinars, in the little Q&A box, if you can leave your name, the company you're joining from with us today, and we'll do a couple of shout outs. We'll start in a few minutes just to allow everyone who's planning on joining us to join the call before we start, and then we'll kick off. Right, good morning, Barry from Autism Initiatives. Good morning, Dan, as well. If there's anyone else who wants to leave their name, the company they call joining us from today, please feel free. What we'll do is we'll kick off now. So good morning and welcome to our how to improve your management of your Office 365 environment webinar today. Just a little bit about BCN Group. I'm conscious, like I said, some of you may have joined us from previous webinars we've done over the last couple of weeks or so. So my name is Dan Felix. I will be your host for today. We're also joined by Mark Knight, who will be the guest main speaker for today. Both of us have over 10 years experience within the IT and the technology sector, and including that as well, digital transformation as well. But like I said, I just want to talk a little bit about BCN Group. Some of you may be aware who we are, some of you may not be. Our mission in life and within BCN Group is to make good organizations great by helping them to operate smarter, faster, and more efficiently through technology. And we believe, like I said, technology can achieve that for nearly every single business within the UK. So like I said, a little bit about BCN Group. We are a complete managed IT solutions provider. We don't concentrate, we don't pigeonhole ourselves into one space. We believe that IT is holistic, technology is holistic. And so therefore, every part that you touch upon will touch upon something else. So whether it's collaboration software will need to be hosted somewhere on a cloud-based platform, but then you'll need to secure that. And that's what we do. We provide that holistic approach to technology through cloud infrastructure, telecoms, development, consultancy, to support, like I said, everything. And we'll talk a bit more in detail about that in a bit. We're independently owned and financially sound. We're also supported by a private equity organisation as well. We're accredited. We'll talk a little bit more about our partnerships with technology providers. But from here, we're an ISO 27000, 9001 partner. We're also Cyber Essentials as well. We're also an approved Crown commercial services supplier as well. We trust over by 1,000 clients, and within that 1,000 clients, we're also supporting in total, just actually now it's over 30,000 individual users. A little bit more about us. We're across 5 sites now. So we've got our head office in Manchester. We've got sites in Leeds, in Lancashire, in Cheshire and Merseyside, 2 offices in Cheshire and Merseyside. We also operate our 2 data centres as well. We're a Microsoft Direct CSP partner. What that means is that we have that direct access, that direct relationship with Microsoft. So we work with them on a pretty much day-to-day basis. We buy our licenses. We We set up subscriptions with Azure through Microsoft, and we're not having to go through a third party. We provide a world-class technical support. We've got a net promoter score around 89%, which is about 20% higher than the industry average. Our team, we have around about 200 across the entire business now, colleagues. Between about 65 to 70% of those roles are some form of a technical based roles, whether that's support to installation, to projects, to development. Our actual biggest team, is the support team, which is made up around about 40% of our workforce, and that could be reactive support as well as monitoring and security. So, like I said, when it comes to our technology stack that we provide, we are big believers that IT is holistic and that everyone should get involved. Not everyone should. Every part of IT gets involved with each other. And so everyone, like I said, everyone then has a touch when everyone gets involved with IT. So like I said, we provide platform, protect, collaborate, development, and IT consultancy-based services. And overarching of all of that is our managed IT support services. And like I said, that's our biggest team across the business. So if anything ever goes wrong or you need help, support, guidance, that team is there ready on hand 24/7 to provide help. Like I said, we've got a number of accreditations across the business. We are a Microsoft Gold partner. We're also an ISO 27001 partner, 9001 partner, Cyber Essentials, part of the Crown Commercial Service Supplier Forum now, and also Disclosure and Barring Service. We have a number of our colleagues who are cleared within that service as well. We also, like we said, we touch upon every part of technology, so therefore the partners we work with are the best the world has to offer, and some of them are incredibly famous household names. So from a communication and collaboration point of view, you've got Microsoft, you've got Ring Central as well. We're an Ignite partner, the first in the north of England to be accredited. That's the highest achievement you can go with Ring Central. We're also now one of their preferred partners of choice. We have that really close relationship with Ring Central for their cloud telephony. From a security point of view, we've got Fortinet, WatchGuard, SonicWall. We've also got in the bottom corner Sophos and Goal and ESET, and Viper, the world's biggest security partners. Connectivity with M24/7, Zen and WaveNet. Very similar to the Microsoft and the Ring Central. Yealink and Poly for collaborative modern workplace headsets and devices, and connectivity, sorry, not connectivity, but platform and storage with HP, Enterprise, Dell, VMware. Honestly, I could spend the entire hour talking about our partner relationships. But what that sort of shows is the relationships we have with some of the world's biggest technology partners. We're also a big believer when it comes to our clients that we don't pigeonhole ourselves, like our technology, into one type of business. The technology, the IT services we can provide can help and support any customer of any size. So no matter of size, location, age, turnover, we can provide technology to help every single business out there in the UK. And you've got an example of some of these. Now, some of these brand names are household names, such as Nichols, which is Vimto, Ferrero, as in Ferrero Rocher. No, we don't get free stuff from them. Much disappointing, really, because I love Vimto. But you can see what we do with some of these. Some of them take all our services, some of them take a few. You know, you can select how many services from us as you want. You can take as very little or as much as you want for us. So with some of these, with the Manchester Airport Group, London Stansted, we also deal with Manchester Airport itself. We're a development partner with them, the same with Staffordshire Police, with Gardner's Books, a huge publishing company. We are we provide them platform, both on-site and cloud. But Metro Rod, for an example, is actually, they take every service. They are a full managed service customer of ours, and we've led them on a digital transformation. And the way we lead these services, the way we interact these services within your business, is through our three-step methodology, which is discover and propose, which is then to transform, adapt, and then to manage and evolve. This for us is the heartbeat of the business, how we provide our services. So therefore, you know, at every point during your work with us, your relationship with us, our partnership with you, is that if a new technology comes on the board, we're never stopping. So it's like an infinity circle, as it were. So when it comes to the manage and evolve bit, it's actually how can we then take you to the next level? The new piece of technology coming on, how can that improve your business? So that's kind of it for me for the moment. We just quickly touch upon the agenda for today's presentation. Like I said, I'll hand over to Mark Knight in a second, who will be your main speaker for today. So we are going to touch upon Microsoft 365's new license structure. Mark said to me a couple of days ago, there's like 1,000 SKUs or 1,000 license types. Don't worry, we're not going to go for all 1,000. I can assure you of that. You know, utilizing some of the apps a bit more, how to develop the environment that works for you, permissions and end user management, and M365 enhanced security features. That's really important, especially we're seeing a real rise in the amount of security attacks happening at the moment. Just before I hand over to Mark, one last thing from me. This is a fully interactive session. Mark and I want you guys to go away from today with all the information that you need, so you feel like you've been empowered a lot more with your IT. So there is a Q&A box. We will encourage you all the way through to ask your questions. Keep them coming in. We'll go to the Q&A. There's a Q&A 10-15 minutes at the end, which we'll touch upon, but please feel free to put those questions in. And without much further ado, I'd like to hand over to Mark.
Thank you very much, Dan. Good morning, everyone. As Dan said, brief agenda for today, and I will try not to bore everyone with Microsoft licensing. Dan is correct. There's over 1,000 licensed SKUs. Microsoft change them every month, and you do have to pretty much take an exam to understand their licensing structure. So the idea today is really to understand what Microsoft's licensing structure is, what's under the hood, what we can do to make Office 365 better for you. So some of the ideas that we can come up with in terms of making that transition, it's all about that cloud journey, that development journey. How you can use your licenses a little bit more efficiently. And again, I won't go into too much detail because I could be here all day. But it's thinking about what licensing you're on, what licensing you could be moved to. Bear in mind, Microsoft is a very flexible environment where you can move and chop and change. So to break it down very simply, last year, or just before last year, like year before, Microsoft changed their license names. Something Microsoft do very frequently is change their namings. Really do appreciate them for it. So we now have the Microsoft 365 Basic, Apps Business, Standard, and Premium. What does that mean? Well, you originally had Essentials, Business, and Pro Plus, Premium, and then 365 Business. They effectively have been renamed. There are some overlap now. So effectively, Business, Standard, Premium, and E3 are sort of in the same realms as each other when it comes to license type. Now, what I mean by this is that your E3 license has pretty much the same like-for-like features and functionality as your Business Premium SKU, however, Business Premium being cheaper than E3. There are some definitions and changes to this. Enterprise applications also have what we call virtual rights management and things like that, where you are allowed to use them in a virtualized environment. And again, I'll touch on this further throughout. But how can I make this easier for you? Well, doing some research on building the webinar, I've come through loads and loads of slides about licensing and trying to make it visually easier to understand, because it is complicated and it is boring. The first question you always need to ask yourself is, what are you? Are you a small, medium business? Are you an enterprise business? Are you government? Are you a charity or a not-for-profit? Or are you educational? These make a big difference when it comes to Microsoft licensing. If you're an SMA, brilliant, okay. You're perfectly entitled to use the Business Premium business products or the small business products. If you're an enterprise, what we mean by enterprise is anyone above 300 users, enterprise SKUs are for you. If you're an education, regardless of size, educational SKUs are for you. If you're a government or local government body, government SKUs are for you, and then same for charities and not-for-profit statuses. They all have their own individual set of core requirements and application process. Again, BCN Group can help you support you going through that process. It can be a bit of a minefield. We've been through it many, many times before, but it does make a big difference, particularly around costs. So in terms of licensing, well, there's the core set of features. With all Microsoft applications, you get the core applications itself. So that's your Exchange, your SharePoint, your OneDrive for Business, your Yammer, Forms, and Teams specifically. But then, of course, you've got your productivity applications, so your Office apps. So that's your OneNote, your Access, your Excel, Outlook, PowerPoint, Word, both online and on-premise. And then you've got your additional applications. So you've got your Power BI, Planner, Lens, My Analytics, Visio, Bookings, and Whiteboard. To make it visually easier, I found these. These are fantastic. These have actually come from a Microsoft engineer from the States, and every month or every time there's an update, he updates these graphics. For purposes of showing on a presentation, I've split this into two individual, but usually they're just one long graphic. But for the purposes, I've split it in two. So this basically breaks down what each individual license gets. So purple bar at the top is your business basic license SKU and your Office 365 product set, making it really easy. So the red is 365, your blue is what we call the Enterprise Management Suite, which is your rights management effectively. All individual plans come with MDM, and again, I'll go through that later on in the presentation. But as you can see, Business Basic comes with the basics of everything. Note there's one major difference between this and all the others, and it's the Office for Web or Office for Desktop. Biggest difference being that the Office for Web is only web-based applications, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Desktop allows you up to 5 desktop installations. Again, Business Standard and Business Premium, you can see how we're adding more things every time. All of these have a maximum of up to 300 users. Now, that's not necessarily the amount of users in your organization. You could have 10,000 users in your org, but only 150 of those users actually use IT. You are still classified in Microsoft Stack as an SMB. Therefore, can you still use the smaller license SKUs? And similarly, if you have 310 users in your organization, you don't automatically have to move everyone up to an enterprise license SKU. There might be a good reason to move to an E-range license, but if you don't need to, you can have a mixture of the two. Microsoft's official terms and conditions say you can mix between the two license types. Again, another breakdown for the E-range licensing. I'm not going to go through every one of these because it will take all day. When you jump from the SMB offering to the E-range licensing, you can see the instant thing that you get as an additional side is things like Business Plan 2 for OneDrive, for SharePoint Online. You've also got Power Apps now on there. We've also looking at Yammer Enterprise and Exchange Online Plan 2, as well as that all important Professional Plus installation of Office, which it gives you virtual rights management. It allows you to run it on a virtualized environment like remote desktop. Now, this SKU has changed slightly. So we've got the Office 365 E3 in red, Enterprise Mobility or EMS in blue, and Windows 10 E3 in green. This is where Microsoft licensing gets even more complicated. Microsoft E-range licenses are split into two different categories. We have the Microsoft 365 E3, and we have the Office 365 E3. Yes, they are different. Yes, Microsoft have to make it really complicated for us. The biggest difference is that the Microsoft E3 or 365 E3 range includes everything you see on that page. Office E365 E3, just the Office applications. So the biggest way to define it is when it just says Office, it means just Office applications and products. When it says Microsoft, it means the entire Microsoft ecosystem. And it's the same for the E5 ranges as well. Now, again, the whole PowerPoint's available at the end, so you can view those graphics in great detail because they are very handy to understand. But with all this application, all these apps, all these features, functionality sets within your Office 365 environment, how do we enhance it? You know, how do we take it from what you've got now and make it better without necessarily upgrading your licenses? You know, not everything has to be related to enhanced spend. Well, some of the points that I thought I could come across with was, build an integrated and comprehensive security solution. Use SharePoint and OneDrive more efficiently. Combine your Office 365 and Azure. Balance your information protection with productivity. What do I mean by that? Well, building an integrated and comprehensive security solution. Very simple, really. Microsoft Office 365 comes with Azure Active Directory by default for all license levels, whether you be at the very basic or the top end. Active Directory or Azure Active Directory is completely free for you to use and is a fantastic tool when you want to integrate certain applications together. It also gives you a really nice unified cloud directory. What I mean by this, for example, you've got Salesforce, you've got Cisco WebEx, Zendesk. The applications are pretty much unlimited. You've got a third-party application, and you want your users to use the same username and password they do for their Office 365 that they do for their on-premise architecture. But on top of that, if you've rolled out things like multi-factor authentication or conditional access, I'll go through those later, this becomes even more prevalent. What we can do with Azure Active Directory is integrate these applications with Microsoft. It means you'll use your same username and password to log in. It also means you'll use the same MFA if you've got that. And it will also mean that if you were doing some role-based access, or you are doing conditional access, or you're even just doing analytical reports based on who's using what, you've then using the Microsoft stack to report across all these different applications. Same with looking at your on-prem. We can do AD right back as well, back to your on-prem infrastructure. So Azure AD becomes the center hub of everything there. It gives you a nice comprehensive solution. It gives you the building blocks for making things better. And then you can even go further. So this graphic specifically talks about how you can use what we call the Graph API. And if you've been in my earlier webinars, you'll have heard me say about the Graph API from a collaboration and productivity standpoint. Well, this is looking at Graph API for what it is. It's an API, it's an application endpoint. So we can drive user creation, user updates, user lifecycle events to all applications. Good example being Workday or Slack. If you're using Slack in your organization and you want to use that to create and remove users, well, you could use the Graph API with Azure Active Directory and right back to your on-premise to do the whole process for you. So rather than creating the person in one place and updating in 3 others, you do it all in one location. But then what about SharePoint? Well, we can use it more efficiently. Avoid folders. Metadata. Back in the early days of SharePoint and OneDrive, but circa 2011, 2012, no one knew about metadata. It was a very complicated thing to understand and very complicated thing to use. It's not. It's very simple. You've got your data is the top element. That's the basis of everything that you do. Everything's driven by data. Underpinning that data is metadata, and your metadata, just like an iceberg, far exceeds the actual data type. It allows you to search for documentation, to classify, to store it in proper places. So when you're thinking about SharePoint, you don't think about files and folders structures, because it doesn't work like that. You think about a flat filing structure with thousands and thousands of documents in, all with their own individual metadata tags. It's all driven by keywords. It makes things a lot easier to use. You can also use its storage to its best practice and work with Microsoft Flows as well. So for example, here we've got updating file properties. Again, using metadata, I'm automating this process here. So I want to say everything in the shared documents then needs to have metadata in. But on top of that, we could use a Microsoft form to drive that flow. You send out a form to all your staff and say, what do you want to prefix all these financial documents with in metadata terms? And then the flow goes and does it. So we're not creating more work for an IT environment, we're making the IT more comprehensive and more efficient without actually increasing our workloads. But then when you think about storage, Microsoft 365 environment in its entirety, regardless of plan, is huge. Even on the business basic, standard and premium SKUs, which are, they start at £1.50 a user, you've got just over 25 terabytes of storage, more than any on-premise system would actually have, more than any laptop or desktop would ever have. But then on top of that, your site collections can exceed 2 million. You can have up to 300 users in there, all with 1 terabyte of storage individually on their OneDrive. That's a huge amount of data that you've got to play with. But then going back to the metadata, we can then upgrade SharePoint. Thinking about how to make it more efficient, you can use SharePoint to create, this is a system that we built ourselves called Dotman. So this is using metadata-driven control for document management. So it's understanding on those libraries. Redesign your SharePoint environment. Keep it short, keep it concise. Use SharePoint search tips. They're fantastic. You just do a search based on either an element of the document, so something that's inside that document that contains, or the name of the document, or the publisher, or the person who's mentioned in it, or the approver. Doesn't really matter. It's all metadata. You can search on any one of those terms, but you can also do an or, and, or with, without in that search term. So I want to find all documents with my name in, and it'll go and do that. It's a very clever search engine. Synchronization, that's another big thing to mention as well, is thinking about your synchronization of files. Do you want to be synchronizing? Now, this is an odd thing to say because OneDrive synchronization is a fantastic tool. But if you're thinking about security and architectural security as well, do you want to synchronize those devices to a laptop before you encrypt that laptop's hard drive? And again, think about using Azure Active Directory or Intune management, where you can BitLocker encrypt that device, keep that information on Intune, and then synchronize those devices. But we can put policies in place to say you can't synchronize that data from OneDrive. You don't ordinarily from SharePoint. So it can be done the same way. But then if you do, you've got all that data on each individual device. It's making life a lot easier. It makes it more efficient for your users to use. You can use known folder moves, which effectively are an automatic way to back up every single user's desktop environment to their OneDrive. Really easy to do. Just synchronizes all of their desktop documents and architecture. It means if you've got users who typically save to desktops and then ring you 10 minutes later saying my PC's crashed and I've lost all my data because I just saved it to my desktop, well, that's one way of fixing that problem really easy. Files on demand, a bit like synchronization, but only pulls the files as and when required. It saves on hard drive space. And again, keep your folders short, concise, and a maximum of 3 levels deep. You don't want to go right deep into your folders. Sharing. If it's going to be shared often, does it actually belong in OneDrive? So if you're constantly sharing documentation out with internal users, is OneDrive the right place to be storing that data, or should it be in SharePoint? Provide training. That's the big thing I would always say, is that giving users all this information is absolutely fantastic stuff. But if you're not going to be willing to train your users or have users trained on that architecture, what's the point rolling it out? A tool is only as good as the person who knows how to use it. And then it's also thinking about what else can be done. Well, Microsoft are, as usual, they have their head in the clouds. They've got plans, roadmaps, things, thoughts and feelings. Microsoft's biggest push at the moment for this decade anyway is virtualization. Let's move everything to virtual. So the next thing that they are working on at the moment is what we call Cloud PC. So I found this article yesterday when I was doing some searching, and it's about Microsoft Cloud PC. It's still a pipe dream of theirs. It's a fantastic pipe dream. For those of you who have heard of, and I'll explain later, Azure AVD or Azure Virtual Desktops, a new version of remote desktop environments, this is the next stage. So this is Cloud PC. I've got no visuals for it because it is still a Microsoft pipe dream. Hopefully, we'll get more this year. I just wanted to stick it in there though, because this is going to be a cloud-based PC run on the Azure architecture, but it will be based on the Microsoft license SKUs, which is a huge difference. So you won't be paying as you go like you do with Azure. You'll just be paying for that license subset like you do with 365 now, which is a fantastic change. But then, as I said, Azure WVD, Windows Virtual Desktop on Azure, it is a subscription-based model, but it's fantastic. Why is it really good? Well, it's Windows 10 to start with. We're not running users in Windows Server environments, which does make a huge difference. You can scale up and scale down really easily. You can deliver it on any device anywhere, whether it be Android, iOS, MacBook, doesn't really matter. It goes back to the true heart of what RDP was all about. But it's built on intelligent security as well, so we can still use multi-factor authentication. We can deploy and scale it to go from 1 user to 400 users. We don't have to, bring up a server just for one person costing 30, 40 pounds a minute. You can spin up a small Windows 10 virtual machine for 1 person or for 3 people, and then scale it up from there. And then reduce the cost as well, because it will scale back down when the users aren't using it. Those machines will automatically shut down. It's all built on Microsoft Azure, but it's using the Microsoft tech stack. And what is more, they've also built it so that you can use it with Microsoft Teams. You can run Teams within a WVD environment using their redirect policies, because it allows the redirection of the audio and video codes. And then balance your information protection with productivity. Now, this is the big one. It's the security, functionality, and the ease of use triangle, isn't it? It's making sure that we are balancing the core security of our architecture. Again, thinking about OneDrive file synchronization, but with security. And driving that back to the licensing side of this, with the right license, you can give them really good cutting edge security, but keep productivity going. There's always a saying that if you stay within the Microsoft ecosystem, you are better off when it comes to collaboration, comes to synchronization of environments, and also these architectural environments talking to each other. That's the big thing. Just want to quickly go through, securing work. This is the big thing as well. So thinking again about balancing security and productivity. Well, what about having individual desktop machines, or BYOD? It's a big thing at the moment with everyone working from home. So this is just showing this PC's got 4 logical processors. You'll note here that virtualization is disabled on that device. So again, this is a home PC. It's not specifically used for business use, and it has not got Office 365 installed on it. And that's what we want it to do. We've now gone to Azure for WVD, and we're going to run up Word as an application and work within Word. Very much so, if you're all used to remote apps, works just like a remote app, but better. And then we can pull into a full remote desktop if we want to. We can deploy any individual application we want to on their device. We're not storing the data on their PC. We're not storing the application on their PC. So we're keeping hold of our security. Note we're now in a virtual machine with lots more power to work with. It supports for multiple users at the same time. We can run graphics and videos in there, and it's scalable at the same time. But then if you want to use individual devices still, and we're not quite there to move people to things like that, automatic document classification, really good idea as well. Automatically classifying documents based on what's in them. So again, here, we've got credit card information because it's an invoice. We've just put some data in. Automatically, Microsoft has realized that is a financial confidential document based on the fact we've just put card numbers in. So it automatically encrypts that document, labels it as confidential, and puts the applicable tags in there. And the same, you can do it on content as well. So here's a blueprint that's been sent across. We're opening up, but look, it's being protected by Microsoft information protection. So you can't comment on it, you can't do any changes. And even if it was sent out to another person, it can't be manipulated with in the same way. And again, that same document that's been pushed in, it's been picked up that Project Jupyter is a sensitive document. Therefore, we want to make sure that it's secured. It's going to pick through and make sure that you're taking out individual words and keywords that aren't related to. But then permissions and end user management. Talking about how we can make our end users work really easily. Well, SharePoint. The core of SharePoint is around its security. These are the SharePoint permissions at a real quick glance. You start at the outside of the ring with full control. Full control means everyone who has that has got access to both that site, subsite user, it doesn't really matter, so on and so forth. And then you drop down those layers of permissions all the way down to that view only permission, which you would typically give to an external body because they can then only view documents. And again, Teams works with SharePoint. SharePoint is Microsoft Teams. Therefore, the security architecture you put on top of SharePoint works within Teams. That's the beauty of it. And also now Teams works back to SharePoint at the same time. So as you're creating Microsoft Teams and channels in there, they create, of course, subsites, but they also create individual SharePoint permission policies. So we've got inheritance, but we've got specifically structured inheritance on Teams. And then thinking about your individual staff. Well, if you want to delegate work as an IT manager, you want to delegate things down to end users. again, with the Microsoft licensing SKUs, we've got a product called My Staff, and it's available on all SKUs, even the small business ones. It's in beta format at the moment, due for full release in March this year, but it's a fantastic thing. Effectively, all it does is an application that you'd install on your iOS or Android device, can have it on desktop, and you can delegate tasks to individual people. So these would be your super users, your departmental managers. What does it do? Well, it allows those staff to operate individual user groups, and you can specify them. It allows them to see those users within each group. It allows them to add MFA numbers, remove MFA, update those. It also allows them to reset passwords or remove that telephone number off. So password resets, and again, if you've got Azure Azure AD write back, it'll be written back to your on-prem infrastructure. So you're giving your super users easy management responsibilities, but in a nice, easy to use interface. It's a lot better than having to go into users and computers with an Active Directory, especially if you just want them to do one specific task, which would be reset passwords or help enroll multi-factor authentication users. But then thinking about individual groups as well within Teams or SharePoint or OneDrive, making sure that things are refreshed and up to date. We can send out automatic access review logs and say, well, do you still need that group in engineering? Is it required anymore? But then you can also look at the My Access side as well. Unfortunately, it's shot behind where it's coming from. That's the view of looking at my applications within Office 365. That, of course, is then driven between multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, the Microsoft ecosystem, and using Azure Active Directory, all working together as one. My Apps, you can put multiple applications in there, not necessarily 365 ones, but as that user clicks on that, using single sign-on, it will push them through to the app without prompting for a sign-in. But you can log that and you can manage that as well. You can have Teams power users. So this is a short video around how to use Teams as a power user. Now, I don't necessarily mean power user as in permissions and management, but I mean power user in understanding how it works. So I can do a find request, which is Control F, and then just do a find. It'll find specific things in general. There are plenty more than that though. So what you can use is you can use that Control F for a shortcut, and you can search between organ name or chat name and message. These are all shortcut commands that you can use within there. And again, you can use org Lee group. So you can find out where Lee is. And there you go. It automatically brings them back to the organizational level information as well. Or you can find a chat or post a chat directly in there, and that'll send a message. So that search bar, again, driven using SharePoint, it's a fantastic tool. And then, of course, what we were talking about before, which was Intune and device end management, bringing it back to that BYOD. You've got self-service, device control on all different devices, all driven from that Microsoft 365 ecosystem and your licensing SKUs. So what I'll do now is I'll drill into some of the more enhanced security features with Microsoft Office 365. So Azure information protection, data loss prevention, and multi-factor. I cannot stress it enough how important multi-factor is to any organization. If you've been on any of our security webinars, I'm sure our security team will have hammered it in as well. If you've ever had the 30-minute phone call with our security experts, they'll have also hammered it home. Multi-factor is probably the most important thing that you can implement on your environment. Why? Well, a password is just not secure anymore. It doesn't matter how many characters, how many wild characters, numbers, special characters, you change it every 3.5 minutes and you've got to keep the last 7,000 passwords. It doesn't matter. People will always choose, because we are human beings, the easiest thing. And again, using single sign-on, using Azure Active Directory, you're not just putting multi-factor in place for one platform, which is 365, you're putting it in across your entire IT environment. But you can also use AIP, so that's information protection, and that will do on-premise as well. So we're thinking about on-prem servers. You can use AIP for that one, and data loss prevention to classify and protect individual files and folders on-premise. And then, of course, you've got your reporting. That's the all important thing, is we can report on it as well. You can use sensitivity labels, message encryption, double key encryption, rights management connection, information rights management as well. You know, the Microsoft security side is such a vast and brilliant system. But then on top of that, we've got conditional access. So this is condition-based access control with multi-factor. So we're going one step further again, particularly useful at the moment with people working from home. Ordinarily, we would lock down everything to the public IP address of our office network. That's great. Then everyone has to be on the VPN to our office to actually access any resource. But on top of that, if the office falls over for whatever reason at all, you know, the power cut, well, there's no one there. You might be an hour away from that office. So that means your entire organization is down for 1 hour at least. You know, the knock-on effect is huge to that. Well, with conditional based access, you can do, the condition is that the user has to be on a pre-enrolled corporate device with the minimum security levels assigned, and therefore you can connect from anywhere in the world. Or I'm connecting on these pre-approved IP addresses alone, and again, specify personal IPs. Or you can use risk-based conditional access. Again, it's a bit like the conditional access policy I was talking about, but it's based on risk. You know, what is the risk? Well, the risk is that for individual users who are classified as high risk or risky sign-ins, they are people who are constantly signing into different applications at the same time, or I can have different apps with different conditions. So for example, if we did it to Salesforce and to Sage or Xero, well, they are really secure systems that we want to limit access and make sure are secure. You know, if for whatever reason our user account was hacked, and it can happen, you know, even with multi-factor, it can happen. We want to make sure that there's a risk based on that. The risk would be, well, the IP address does not exist in the UK, or I've logged in Reading, and all of a sudden I'm logging in Tokyo. Well, that's what we call an impossible travel event. So it will automatically sign that user out of these applications. So it's thinking about it that way. And again, you know, a view of looking at all the applications. But then, of course, you can do lots of policy reviews. You know, you can identify these policies and also report on them, so you can understand what's wrong with them. You can look at the sensitive data types. You can put sensitive data reports on OneDrive, on Sharepoint, and show each individual user. And again, as I said, MFA is available on all 365 plans, all security defaults. You know, there's no reason at all why it shouldn't be implemented for your users. You know, BCN Group, we are there to help you with that, making sure you have the right licensing. If you need additional controls, if you want additional things that are available in AD Premium, like conditional based access or MFA, or membership access or applications or identity protection, you know, we can help with that. It's all around making sure that you're secure. But then on top of that, we've got Defender. Defender is your antivirus, it's your endpoint protection for the devices, not just desktop, that's also individual personal devices like iPhones, Android phones. You know, everyone seems to have this wild illusion that iOS and Android are completely secure environments. They're not. They're no different to a Windows 10 or PC. To be honest with you, they're probably less secure than, because we don't think about them as often. They still need endpoint protection. So that's where the security compliance comes in. Using Defender, we can put anti-phishing, anti-spam in, you know, DKIM management, anti-malware, and do reports on it, threat investigation and report capabilities, understanding what's going on in our environment. And then use Endpoint Manager with Defender to manage all your individual devices on the network, wherever they are in the world. You know, it's the beauty of Intune working with Office 365 and Azure, is that it doesn't matter where the user's based. They don't have to be calling back to the office on a VPN. You know, at the moment, a lot of us working from home may not have been on the VPN for at least 6 months. Well, of course, most devices will become untrusted from your local domain after 90 days. So people are going to start having issues. So start thinking about, you know, doing it a different way. So what have I gone through? Well, how we can support you on a digital transformation journey, understanding, you know, how we can implement these solutions, that they work for you. You know, it's great. We've got loads and loads of applications, you know, over 1,000 different application SKUs from Microsoft and license types. Brilliant. All this stuff at our fingertips. Does it actually work for you? Do you need all of it? You know, where do we need to go here? but then it's making full use of those license SKUs. Again, this presentation will be shared at the end anyway, and all those SKUs. I'll also include the link directly to the Microsoft Guru for the licensing, because I think it's really important for you all to understand it. It's something that I'll probably do on a frequent basis, as well as distribute what license changes there are, certainly from BCN Group perspective, because they do change and change quite frequently. But then, of course, cloud communications. I'm the communications expert, so I wouldn't go without saying. Microsoft also have their calling side, their implementation side. So it's also understanding that element as well and helping you on that journey. How? Well, 30-minute free discussion. I think I battered this one down the last few weeks. Lovely QR code. Scan it anytime. It'll go to Microsoft Bookings, and therefore you can book out myself or one of my other colleagues, depending on what your requirements are. If you want to talk about security, it's our security experts you need to speak to. If you want to talk about communications, collaboration, and cloud transformation, it's myself and the other pre-sales that you need to speak to. And it's understanding your environment as well. As Dan said right at the start, we are specifically here to help you and understand and put you on that journey. We're not selling you a box. We're helping you understand what that box is and develop it. I hope this has been a good presentation. I hope no one's fallen asleep. Always do get afraid with webinars because I can't see the whites of people's eyes. So I'm hoping that everyone's enjoyed that one.
Lovely, thanks, Mark. As we said at the start, the Q&A is now ready for everyone to use. So if you have any questions, please fire them through in the Q&A section, and I'll read them out. And it'd be great as well if you can put your name to that question as well, so we can credit you with it. Just want to reiterate a point made by Mark during today's presentation, which has been fantastic, is the security element. We are starting to see, last year we started to see a bit of an increase in cyber attacks going on. And that trend is continuing, but it's actually going up a lot faster. Now we're in 2021. And just pure, and we've done security-based webinars in the past, and we're looking to do some more in the future. But having something as simple as multi-factor authentication, or two-factor authentication, is also known as, just in place for your business, for your end users, it's incredibly powerful stuff. No matter how big or small you are, every business has the potential to become a victim to cybercrime, to cyber theft. And I'll tell a very, very quick story, because I could tell this is a quite long story, but I'll do it really quickly. I used to work for an organization who had a customer who's in the finance sector, who said they were too small to get hacked. And when we had a conversation with them, fast forward 2 years later, they lost £75,000 because they said, as a start, they thought they were too small to become a victim to cyber theft. And what was happening was somebody had been watching the MD's emails and had been, over a period of time, starting to look how that person uses email, their phraseology, etc., and had been emailing the FD regarding transfer monies to a set account. And it was then only discovered during a board meeting that we discussed about it. The MD said, "I've sent you no such money." So you can understand the importance of having something as simple as multi-factor authentication, which just adds a little extra layer of security, because no password is safe. That just provides a little bit about. There's a little degree of protection, allows other devices in a person's hands to just become aware of anything that's going on, or if anyone's trying to get access. So I really can't stress that enough, and we've got some content around that if you're interested as well. So we've had a couple of questions. The first question is from Dan. If you're running a VDI, what hardware and licenses are required by the user?
That is a good question. As a minimum, you will have to think about your Office 365 installation. Now, there's two different flavors around it. If you're talking about the Microsoft VDI environment, you have to start at Business Premium, so that's the new Business Premium SKU, or Enterprise E3, which again, like I said at the beginning, are pretty much level pegging with each other these days. They both give you the virtualized rights to use Windows 10 in a virtualized environment, because it is virtual, and also the Professional Plus installation of Office 365 apps. It used to be called Pro Plus. It's now called Apps for Enterprise, which is not helpful with Microsoft at all. But yeah, the basics are the Business Premium below 300 users or E3 above. But there can be additional requirements. Again, contact us if you want some more info on that.
Thanks, Mark. Next question is from Barry. How would you suggest going about an MFA implementation for environments where not all users have mobile phones, etc.?
Oh, two really easy ones. One, speak to our security experts, because they do this day in, day out. But two, the easiest way is to say to users, and unfortunately it is the way it is, you've all got mobile phones. You might not have work phones, but everyone's got a mobile phone these days. I think you're living in the Stone Age if you don't. The Microsoft Authenticator, which is a free app that can go on any mobile phone, does not take over your phone. It's not a piece of malware that Microsoft have created to spy on you and give all the data to China. It is just a basic authenticator. Above that, if you've got an Android device, all Android devices come with the Google Authenticator by default, which can be used with Microsoft. Or if you don't want to use that, you can just use the text message or the phone call functionality, and Microsoft does not store the mobile phone number for anything else other than the MFA requirements.
Yeah, so just going back onto Mark's first point there, it can be as simple as a text message coming through, and I used to get the text messages coming through. So and it used to be a 6 or 8 digit code that you can just utilize from there. So it is as straightforward as that. Right, thank you for that question, Barry. So Dan's asking another question. Yep. So would I need to license the PC and then the VDI?
No. So we've got to think about with Microsoft licensing is that, and again, if you think about when you install Office 365 specifically on a device, you have up to 5 devices on the individual license SKU to install it on. The beauty is that if you had 2 laptops for work, for example, desktop, laptop, that sort of thing, you can install the same thing on multiple places. It's the same with VDI. So you are licensing the individual user regardless of the device they're using. So if you're using the E3 to license Windows 10 on a desktop device, you then still have the virtualized right to install and use VDI for that same user SKU. And then Office has up to 5 users as well. So or 5 installs to make that easy enough to explain.
Lovely, great. And Dan with another question again. I'm running Intune with MFV when I log in online. But this does not apply when logging into all devices. Is that correct?
I presume you're talking about MFA, and it depends how MFA has been deployed in your environment. Like I say, there are conditional-based policies that it's not conditional-based access. Conditional-based policies are specific for multi-factor, and it will basically tell you where multi-factor is to be enabled and challenged for your users, and it depends how it's been set up. So I couldn't really comment until I saw your environment or certainly one of our security techs. If you're worried or you want some advice, by all means speak to Mark or Carly in our security departments. They're the people who do it day in, day out. They live and breathe this sort of stuff, and they'll help you out there.
Yeah, what I'll do, Dan, is I'll get in touch with your account manager and I'll ask them to give you a call specifically to have a conversation about this. And yeah, as Mark said, we probably can arrange a call with Collie Woodward or Mark Worthington, our security experts in the business. So if there's no other questions, we still have a few minutes if you want to add stuff in, but I just want to round up a couple of points from today. We would have all seen it over the weekend. Can
I throw you out of this meeting?
You can't throw me out of this meeting. You have no authority. Can I promise you, right, we've not rehearsed that. That is completely spontaneous, and I think we did well there, Mark.
Yeah, I think we did. I think we did okay. I wasn't shouting at you, was I?
No, you weren't shouting at me. You weren't shouting at me. So if you have obviously seen the fun and the palaver that went on with the Hanford Parish Council meeting back in December, which went viral the weekend, we have launched some further content off the back of it, so your meetings aren't as chaotic as that, with some new features that are now available with Teams and that are coming with Teams over the next coming weeks, including putting your hand up, which I think a number of them should have done on the call, breakout rooms, which again some of them should have done in the call as well. So please feel free to have a look at that. We have some more of the webinars coming up in a few weeks' time, but we'll announce them shortly. We do have some additional resources as well off the back of today's webinar. One is what we said at the start is 2020 has kind of forced a lot of businesses' hands into starting digital transformation and that modern workplace journey. We want you to continue that in 2021. So there's a guide available to you about how you can plan your IT workplace modernization in 2021. And the other is a guide on how to get a better experience with Teams and Office or Microsoft 365. But it goes without saying, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much for Mark for presenting. I hope you found today's webinar of use and of interest. Like I said, we do have some more coming up in a few months' time, covering things like Sage, a bit more about security in depth, and SharePoint as well, and Azure cloud hosting. But I'll just leave it and say thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll hopefully again see you in the next few months.